Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. Obviously, this installment of our monthly training for our, LWIAs and workforce partners. So, thank you for joining today. Hope you all are having a wonderful day thus far and enjoying the weather out there. So, today, just kind of a brief overview as to what to expect, as to what we're going to be covering. I am going to go briefly over the partner guide page and briefly cover some of the updates to the VJF platform and tool that have been made since our last meeting in April. After I have completed that, I'm going to hand things over to David, and David is going to give you just a real brief kind of demo of some of the new features that have been in the works or have been added to the virtual job fair tool. So just to give you all kind of a simulation as to what that new interface, if you will, is going to look like. You'll be able to see that. And of course, as usual, after we've gone through all of that, we'll open it up for Q&A. If you guys have any questions, thoughts, concerns, anything that you'd like us to demo maybe for our next session, keep that question back of your mind while we are presenting today. And of course, feel free to speak up once we get to that Q&A portion. So again, thank you all for joining today. So the first thing we're going to do is go to that partner guide page, which a lot of you are all familiar with already. You'll see here, of course, we have a virtual job fair guide. We'll click on that. And then just for your own information moving forward, if you ever want to just check in on any of the updates that have been made between meetings that happen, you can click this partner tool updates tab here. So if we scroll down here, you'll see the first kind of action item, if you will, is the creation of an FAQ page, excuse me. I'll click on that to give you all just kind of a view as to what this looks like here. As you can see here, first up, audience, you can drop it down here, select either business or individual. Break it down by subject, obviously employers or job seekers. Of course, over here to the right, you have the ability or option to submit your own question to be answered. And here, of course, it's just a breakdown as to some of the FAQs for employers that we get on a frequent basis. As you'll see here, I don't really want to go through this in its entirety, obviously. We'd be here all day going through all of this, but you'll see, some of the virtual job fair employer FAQs that we get. Do I need an Illinois Worknet account to add a booth page? Of course, we answer that question. We provide any links that you see here. How can I add a booth to the VJF page? Again, we provide the links and just a real brief kind of overview or process of how to go ahead and do so. I know a lot of you who have held VJF events are already, thoroughly familiar with this process. How to request assistance in holding an event. Of course, you'll see here we have a step-by-step breakdown. How to create a Worknet account, submitting an employer booth page, so on and so forth. Given a brief overview of what a VJF event looks like as a single employer event on Worknet. Answering the question, does it cost to hold a virtual job fair event? How to update an employer booth. How long does it take to get a virtual job fair scheduled? How can I promote or market my virtual job fair? How to add a flyer, how to create a flyer, and how to add documents to an employer booth. Again, the key here is just, again, the more information that we can provide for folks, the better. We don't want to go through this again, super in depth. If you want to take a look at it, you absolutely can. But the key here is that we have created the page. If you want to direct either employers or job seekers to the page, obviously that's what's key here. It's going to answer a lot of those questions that maybe you don't know off the top of your head, or maybe you do, but just not in a very, thorough or concise manner. You can direct them to this page, and of course, it's going to answer, hopefully, a lot of those questions that they have. So moving down here, again, just kind of the same thing, except geared more towards job seekers, as you'll see. So it'll show them, how do I register for a virtual job fair event? What pages to go to? How to go about registering? Do I need an account to register for a VJF? What type of devices should I have? what type of software, more specifically Zoom, the most recent download should I have, and of course a link there letting folks know that they need to have that most recent version of Zoom client for meetings downloaded in order to be able to utilize all those features that we use on our virtual job fairs. Obviously, section here, folks can't find login info, how to join the event, what the kind of post-event protocol might be for a job seeker after an event has taken place. Obviously, you see it's the VJF recorded. As many of you know, of course, we record all of our events. So we do let the job seeker know that if they do want to review a recording or an event that they might not have been able to attend, they can absolutely do so by going to our YouTube channel. You'll see a link there. Kind of going over the process of multi-day events. And then you'll see here, just kind of the process for, registering for multi-day or multi-session events, so on and so forth. So again, just a real brief overview of that FAQ page that we rolled out here. Again, the takeaway or point being here is just access to information, trying to provide as much of it as we can to both employers and job seekers alike, and also offload some of those questions that might come your way when you're creating a virtual job fair event. You'll see here the next kind of rollout that we did here is that we added a note about the employer or the VJF employer booth search, for clarification on results. You can now search for a booth by address for some of the booths that we do have. Obviously, there's a few caveats to that. If employers offer, fully remote work or jobs of that nature or sort. So again, just a minor point there, but again, just another way we can kind of whittle down, some of those results that we get. Obviously, we have more than 400 booths on our employer booth page. So again, being able to narrow those down or narrow that scope of the search is obviously going to be key for a lot of folks that are looking for jobs in particular areas. Moving on to our next update, you'll see here is a page for employers on how to get started with VJF. And David put these together. I think they're real excellent, just kind of quick start guide for folks who are not familiar with the VJF platform or process. So again, you'll see here, this is that quick start guide for setting up your employer booth. Some of this you might be familiar with here, that add booth tab there, instructions on how to do so step by step. And then we literally go, literally step by step, we break it down. And we have accompanying videos for each one of these steps here, so folks can watch these videos. It will walk them through each step of the process as they go through it when they're creating that employer booth. So we do suspect this will help, again, kind of offload some of that difficulty that maybe some of you who have hosted or facilitated virtual job fair events have had in trying to get employers to, submit those employer booths. We know there's kind of, several steps that are involved with that. And the more we can clarify that and make it as clear as possible and easier to navigate, the better. So you'll see, again, just a brief intro here. I'll get started, how to submit an employer booth, how to manage an employer booth, preparing and attending an event, and then post-event and follow-up. And of course, as you'll see here to the side, we have accompanying videos for all this here. And again, takeaway here is just the more information that we can provide folks, the better. And what we're trying to do, again, is make that workload or those duties when we're creating these events for LWIAs and workforce partners as easy as we can and simple and straightforward as possible. And our last update here is kind of something that is similar. Again, another quick start guide, but it is for the job seeker. So you'll see here, very much similar format, giving them a brief introduction, getting started, how to register for the events, how to navigate that VJF event calendar. preparing for an event, and this goes through it, everything very thoroughly, as to, what type of technology you need to have as far as devices, any sort of software that needs to be had prior to going to an event. A resume writing guide that we have linked there, if maybe they need to brush their resume up and get it squared away. And then of course there, we do have an option for them to create a Worknet account, which will, give them access to all those great tools and resources that we have to offer. And then just kind of a last point here, you'll see just kind of telling job seekers what to do or what to expect after an event has taken place. Again, just trying to reiterate that, they conduct that follow-up, they update that resume. Again, the work continues even after the event takes place, so to speak. And you'll see here off to the right-hand side, of course, accompanying videos that walk these job seekers through all of these steps as well. So again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but just trying to, increase that access to information for both job seekers, employers alike, and then also make, the jobs of the LWIAs and workforce partners easier as we move forward with kind of this new format for events or creating or coordinating and planning events, if you will. So I do believe those are all the updates that have taken place thus far that we do already have rolled out. David is going to give you a brief demo over some of the updates that are in the works. And we do think a lot of these, hopefully folks will be excited about. Hopefully it'll make, your job or lives easier, if you will, while you are obviously planning, coordinating, marketing these events moving forward. So David.
Thank you, Daniel. And something I do want to add is, Daniel showed those guides. Something that we do have in process is, in progress, I should say, is having a similar guide for our workforce partners, so you, that would walk through the steps of planning an event. So we have that for, job seekers and just getting introduced to the system, registering, attending, and so forth, and employers and getting started and set up. And we want to have a similar guide for larger events that you might be planning or, considering. So that way, you have, one page that you can reference and see, the steps, the appropriate links, and accompanying videos. And so that is something that's in progress as well. And so I wanted to, in previous meetings, I believe we've kind of briefly glossed over that, we are going to be making updates to the VJF system. And this document here is, kind of ever changing. And so it just kind of walks through the process of, the different audiences and how they'll use the system. And, some of these screens are not going to change, but we want to consolidate all of the different websites we're using to coordinate these events. So we have Worknet for the employer booths. Currently, we have Eventbrite for registration, SurveyMonkey for feedback surveys, and Google Forms. And that was, we kind of had to put something together pretty quickly at the onset of the pandemic so we could have something in place. And so now what we're doing is we're making updates to integrate these into Worknet so that we can just streamline the process and be more efficient and save time and more importantly gather information that isn't currently being collected. And so what we're beginning to do is, so currently if an employer, for them to request assistance in hosting a virtual job fair, they'll, let's say they created their account, they submitted the booth, it's been approved. If they want to reach out to us to coordinate an event, let's say, for instance, it's Memorial Health System, they'll log into Worknet, open their dashboard, click this VJF icon, and that'll bring them here. And what they'll then do is click this green icon, manage job fairs. And if they want to add a job fair, they have the option to add their own or request assistance. And currently, when you request assistance, they have to complete a Google form. And then, there's some back and forth between SIU and the employer in question here. And one of the updates that we have on test that I think will be rolled out probably next week is, let me pull this open here. Go back here. Is having a dashboard for these requests. And so, for example, for single employer events, and we want to open this up to the partners once it's ready, but we still have to do some more testing with this. But they would come in here and see, okay, here's the different single employer VJF event requests I have. And so you can filter by the status, all of them, the ones that are currently open, the events that are in progress, the events that have been completed, the events that have been canceled. And you also have a date range that you can search of when that employer would like to hold that event, and an after event follow-up. So, that's some of the questions that we've been getting is, is some of this information being collected? What's the success of these events? How many were hired as a result? And currently, that was never something that was put in place, but we're moving in that direction so that we can, have one location and track it and open it up so that, our partners can, have this data. And so we also have a filter here for after event follow-up. You can see the follow-up status, all of them, if follow-up is needed, if you have followed up with the employer, and if it's completed and that information is known. And so you see this table here. And so when an employer submits that request, so like I said, currently, my window. So like I said, currently they have to fill out this form. So in lieu of this, what we've done is we've moved this into, and this is on test, we've moved this in here so that when an employer goes to submit a request for assistance, it no longer goes to that Google app, it'll be within Worknet, and then they'll fill out this information. And once they do fill out that information about their event and click submit, a record will show up in this table here. And so you'll see, the employer name, the booth ID number, the status. So once it's submitted, it would show up as new. The date that request was submitted. And then the start date, that indicates when they would like to hold their event. And then the follow-up status, that kind of after event status. And then which Illinois Worknet user was the last one to update the record for this request. So for example, if we click open this one here for GE Transportation, we see an overview of all this. So we see for the event info, we see the employer name, the submission date and time, and then the date range for when they'd like to hold their event, as well as the selected available times. We also see if the employer needs Zoom training, which is the webinar platform that we provide. And we also ask them if they'd like to participate in a live event that would include just their organization, or if they'd be open to a larger event with other employers in the same industry, region, and so forth. And then you can see the information that they submitted for the target population, if it's for returning citizens or dislocated workers. In this case, it's all. And then we have questions here. Do you accept non-English speaking employees? And if yes, will you provide your own translator? And then over here on the right, we see the request status. So this one was submitted, but it's not yet been responded to. And then we see, and as the event progresses and leading up to it, you can select the event, where this is in progress, the event hasn't happened yet. Once it's been completed, you can check that, or if it's been canceled, you can check that as well, so you have that record. Then we see the contact information of who submitted that request. So this would be the individual who has access to manage that employer booth page. And so you see the name, the email address, and the phone number, as well as the LWIA that they are located in, and the industries that they're hiring in. And so once the scheduling's been confirmed, what you can then do, or what we would do in this case if it's requested through Illinois Worknet, is we'd create a Zoom room, add the URL here, And then for additional information, like the call-in number, meeting ID, any other notes, those can be included here. And we also have a note here, just to make sure that those events show up in that VJF events calendar from that landing page. We have a note here, be sure to tag the event for the series as virtual job fair, so it shows up on that calendar. And then we have a quick link here where we can just add the event and, just enter it right there rather than, navigating to it in another window perhaps. And we'll come back to this post-event follow-up, but down here we have a notes section. And so what you can do is, so let's see, this is new request. And then you can say, so it's new request, and then I followed up with the employer and confirmed that that we are good to go for, let's see, the date ranges between the 19th and 31st. So, you can add a note in here and just say, employer VJF event for May 25th at 10 a.m. Supposed to be created and sent out to promote the event. Employer needs to provide presentation. And then you can click save. And so that'll create a record here of, it'll show, what was the last thing that, happened leading up to the event. So like let's, the status of it. So, in the event that, Daniel and I are on the same team. So, if Daniel's familiar with one event and I've been on, vacation for a week and I come back and then, he needs assistance with this event, I can just come in here and see what the status is, what the most, what's still needed and so forth. And so, we can add another note, later that, social media posts scheduled, employer is provided, PowerPoint presentation set for event on the 5/25. And so, it's been saved successfully. And so then, we can have that event, and then up here, we would change, in progress to completed, save any of the changes, by just clicking that save button. And so, yeah, then, the event has been completed. And so then, what's needed is the post-event follow-up. So, a few weeks after the event, you can reach out to the employers and or the job seekers of the event to determine, the success of the event. So we have just a few questions here. How many were hired as a result of this event? So let's say there's, a big turnout for the event and they had, a lot of open positions. And let's say they, filled, 4 positions since the event. You can also add, how many attended. Let's say there was 100 who attended. And then which industries did you hire in? And so if you click on this, you can then add, let's see, what is this? GE transportation. So you can come in here and, enter transportation and warehousing, but maybe somebody in the, information systems, information technology, a position was hired there as well. You can add that in here. And so, after you follow up with them, you can check this and, make a note that, employer we can make that note there, check that follow-up, save it. And then once we do hear back from them, we can enter that information here. And then once you have all the information here, you can just mark this as completed. Click save. If we go back here, we can see that this record, the request status is completed, the events happened, the follow-up status is completed. We know that the event was a success and so forth. And so that's something that we're close to adding into Illinois Worknet, pushing that to production. There's a little bit more testing just to make sure that everything is functioning properly in the way it works. So I did want to provide an update on that. And I also wanted to go over, no, wrong window again. It's this one here. So yeah, so that's one of the updates that we have coming. Again, we want to bring some of these different systems we're using into Illinois Worknet. And so we have to start with that, and we'll bring in the registration. Because if you've worked with us before on a single or multi-employer event, and you kind of wanted some of that demographic or information or participant information, we have to go into Eventbrite, create the registration page, and then export that report of those who registered. And so something that we're moving to is, by having a dashboard like I just kind of demoed, adding another feature where you can come in for, I'm in Springfield. So if I was, at the Illinois Worknet Center in Springfield, I'd be LWIA 20. And I could just log into Illinois Worknet, find, an event that was completed, and just download the registrants and those who actually attended, rather than, coming to us. And, it just saves, everybody time having all these systems in one place with, the appropriate access. And so that is something that we are moving to. So I see there's a couple questions in the chat. Who sends out the social media posts? And so that's a good question. So currently, if an employer comes into Illinois Worknet and submits a request, Daniel will follow up with them, determine the time, make sure that, social media gets, scheduled and posted, and, the employer is ready for the event. And so, we will post about that, but what we want to do is make sure that, all of our partners and all the different LWIAs have access to the virtual job fair tool, so they can see which events are happening in their area so that they can promote it as well. Because, Illinois Worknet, our Facebook and Twitter, will promote the events, but, that only gets to the same, unless we're bringing in new, followers, which we do, but, just having the event promoted from different sources, we don't have the same email list as, you or the, different outreach, capabilities. So, we really encourage that LWIAs promote the events in their area as well. See, I have businesses that have posted openings but do not want to do the interviewing process virtually. Is it okay for businesses to post their open positions but not actually have a virtual interviewing event? Yes, absolutely. So for the single employers, so there's a few different things. So what they can do is they can just add a booth, and if they don't want to hold an event, they don't have to. They can just have, a posting up here. If they do want to hold an event, what our, practice is for the single employer event requests for, SIU, they're limited to 30 minutes. And in that 30-minute session, we'll provide an introduction, and the employer will speak about their organization, and then open it up to questions. And that's it. There's no interviewing process or breakout rooms for the single employer events, as much as some employers request that, but at least, currently with Daniel and myself as kind of the VJF team over here, we just can't accommodate that because there's so many requests that come in, whether it's a single employer event or, a larger event with more partners in the mix. But yeah, if they do not want to have a virtual interview, at least with, what we offer, Daniel and myself, we do not include that in the single employer events. Why aren't veterans included as a separate population in the attendee populations? That is we have active military, but I think maybe we should change that text to something else. I think in a different registration we had something active military. I think we kind of grouped them into one and listed it out as such: active military, active or retired military, or spouses. So let me make a note of that we can Active military or not veterans. So yeah, in that case, I think we can add a few different filters here. So active military, veterans, spouses of veterans. Yeah, and if there's, I do appreciate that, Rick. We can add more in there. So if there's additional, target populations that, we're omitting here, by all means, let us know, and then we can look into getting those added into here. Let's see, next question. Have you tracked which social media outlets are effective in attracting job seekers? That's a good question. I know our social media expert, Kimberly, is not on. Daniel, I know you schedule some of those posts, so I'm not sure if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I know Kimberly has stated in the past that Facebook tends to create the greatest yield out of at least the 3 platforms we use, which is Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I know in particular, she stated when you create a Facebook event and you tag any of the partners who are involved in the planning coordination process, if you will, that tends to increase the amount of traffic as well, and ultimately, obviously, registration. So short answer is Facebook. But more specifically, Facebook through creating a event.
Thank you, Daniel. Let's see, another question in the chat here. Is there a way we can do follow-up with job seekers? Can we get their email addresses to follow up in case they need more services or help in finding a job? So yeah, after the events, what we'll typically, well, no, not typically, what we do is for multi-employer events, if we'll provide that registration information that's collected on Eventbrite, and it'll be an Excel report that'll show name, email address, address, and some of the demographic information that's collected. And yeah, we do send that to the partners, and they can then, follow up with the job seekers with additional resources to check in on their, in their status and so forth. And so currently what we have to do in order to kind of provide that information is you have to send Daniel or myself an email, and we'll, go to the event and here on Eventbrite, and then, we'll pull that report, and then we can send it to you. But we do want to move, and that's one of the future updates, is the ability for our partners, depending on their LWIA, if the event's in LWIA 17, then, workforce partner can log into Worknet, pull that report from that event, and follow up and, inquire if they need more services or help in finding a job, kind of guide them and offer that assistance as well. And so something else, so we're going to have that dashboard in the very near future. And one of the things we want to do is, in moving away from Eventbrite and integrating registration into Worknet, what we're going to have is, so currently job seekers do not have to have an Illinois Worknet account to register for an event, but one of the updates that we're going to have in the future is that they will be required to. And so what they would do is, it'd be kind of the same process here. They come to Illinois Worknet, search the virtual job fair page, find an event or a booth that has an event, and then, they'll click on the event, they'll see this window pop up and a link to register. And so when they click that link, if they're not already logged in, they'll be asked to sign in or create an account. And so once they do, create an account and sign in, then we'll have a registration page set up that'll provide an overview of the event, and then they can click register now. And then they'll complete this registration form, and some of these filters are subject to change, certainly, but they'd enter their name, email address, phone number, And this is where some of that demographic information that's been requested in past events, this is how we would collect it. And so we'd see, race, gender, the employment status, if they're receiving unemployment insurance, are they a veteran? Do they have experience in this industry? If they would like to, they can include a link to their resume there. If they don't have a link to their resume, we'll have a link so that they can use the Illinois Worknet resume builder, and they can build their resume, upload it, create a new one, and get a link for it and plug it in there. If they say no, they don't want to share it, then we can offer a note that would they like assistance in updating or creating their resume, and we'd include a link to the service finder where they can see search by location to determine what LWIA that they're in, what American Job Center they should contact, and then also providing a link to the resume writing guide. And a question we ask on all of our events with SIU: do they have any accessibility needs? If so, please let us know so we can accommodate. And then they'll register for the event. And then they'll get a note that, thank you for registering. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly. You can download it to your email address, add it as a calendar invite. And so what we'll then do is, so they'll get the email and they'll say, thank you for registering to access this webinar. You'll go to Illinois Worknet messages inbox, and that'll be a link to their inbox. And depending on whether or not they're logged in, they'll log in, and the Zoom information will be included there. And then we also just have, now that you've registered, check out the employer booth page. Here's a demonstration on how virtual job fairs go for these events. And here's a couple articles on what to expect, how to prepare for a virtual job fair, and then attending a virtual job fair, what to expect, best practices, do's and don'ts, next steps, sort of thing. And so once they click this inbox link here, this will go to their messages up here in Illinois Worknet, the confirmation information for that event. So they'll click on this. We have Amazon as an example, and then we'll have the webinar information here. And so the reason we're doing this is, we'll be able to tell that, John Smith registered for this event, but did John Smith actually attend the event? And so including this information here, what we're going to do is having this information here. If the user John Smith clicks this link, we're going to be able to pick up on that and see that John Smith did in fact attend this VJF for Amazon. And so that's kind of one of the next updates that our programmer who's been working on is integrating this registration component. And once we do that, once we have that registration component in place, what we can then do is go back a page here. Have another column here that would export registrants, participants, the demographic information that the job seeker completed when they registered for the event, the email address, contact information, and so forth. And so that's just kind of what's coming down the pipeline in terms of updates to the VJF system. So I just wanted to provide an overview of that. And let's see any other questions in the chat at the moment, but yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to share in the chat, or you can also unmute and ask away. Well, if there's no other questions, we can Oh, okay. Is there a helpline for first-time users? So what we, actually, it's a good question because that makes me think of a note I need to add on a couple of pages here. So yeah, what we're going to do, I think what we can add to the quick start guide pages for the job seekers and the employers, at least for users who come into the system, we can have them send an email to info@illinoisworknet.com, and we'll get those pages updated to include that text. And so that'd be for job seekers or employers, and then that will be directed to Daniel or myself. But if your question is more for partners kind of being introduced to the system, then I would say go ahead and send Daniel or myself an email, and I'm going to share our emails in the chat here. So I've just shared those in the chat. And yeah, you can reach out to us, and then we'll answer any questions you have if you want to just kind of discuss what a larger event with multiple employers would look like. We're happy to get on a call and walk through that process and get started there. Do LWIA staff need an Eventbrite ticket to get into our own event? So what we have with Eventbrite registration is, let me go to that page. Whether you're a job seeker, the employer, or LWIA staff, it's all the same registration information. And so, if you're working with us, what we'll do is, we'll be emailing you a comprehensive document for your multi-employer event. Actually, let me go back to this other example here. And no matter who it is, they're going to be receiving the same information, the same Zoom information. So it doesn't differ in that way, if that answers the question. Or could you possibly list contact info for partners on the website? Yeah. So what we have, at least in this mock-up here, is when the job seeker registers, what we want to do is, so we have that link here to contact your local American Job Center, but we also want to capture what LWIA they're in. And we can update this text to, make it more clear if need be as we get these updates going. But, it'll show, and maybe you'll even say, this is the American Job Center you should contact. Maybe that would be a better way to do it, because what we want to do is tie their account, their Illinois Worknet account, to the LWIA they're in. And then they can see, I'm in LWIA 7, this is the American Job Center closest to me, and then they can just reach out to that organization directly. So yeah, that is something that we would want to do, because we do want to make it as easy as possible for the job seeker and our partners, employers and LWIA staff. We want to make this as smooth as possible, and leave no stone unturned, so to speak. Are there any other questions? Yeah, there's a lot of good questions today. So what we're going to do is, so this event is, or this session is being recorded, and like the previous monthly sessions, we do add them to the VJF partner guide. And so if you just go to illinoisworknet.com, click on this partners icon up here, and scroll down to tools, guides, and initiatives and select virtual job fair guide. And under partner training materials and videos, what we'll do before the end of the day is add this morning's session here as a recording, and then you can see, the title, the date, materials. This would be the recording, any documents we might have gone over, and then just, a bulleted list of here's what was covered. And so, yeah, that'll be uploaded before today is over. So you can come back to and watch again if you're interested or want to share with others. And so, yeah, it looks like our next session will be on June 4th, 10 a.m. I believe that is all that I had to say. Daniel, is there anything I'm missing or anything you want to add?
Nope, I think you covered it very thoroughly. Thank you for that overview, David. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. All right, everybody. So in that case, seeing no other questions in the chat, I think I can give you back 10 to 11 minutes of your morning. So thank you all for joining us. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Daniel or myself. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and weekend. Thanks, everybody.